What's up? I'm doing a little solo venture today. This is actually my third take. I had to buy a new microphone. I don't know if you can see it, but audio wasn't great, so we're gonna try this one more time. It's a little late, but it was still gonna air at the same time. So here we go. Here goes nothing. I do want to start off by making sure that you guys know I'm a conspiracy guy in the sense that I enjoy them and I think there might be little nuggets of truth in them. And the more random shit that flies in with any of these, add a little more credence to the possibility, I guess would be the best way to say it. So keep that in mind as I'm doing this show. I'm not telling you that I believe in all of this. I'm saying a lot of things have stacked up to paint a picture that I think is worth looking at. So, with that being said, I want to kind of talk about CERN, and I know we've talked about CERN in the past, but there are just some things making this puzzle look a little different now. CERN just recently turned on the LHC, and they're going to run it 24/7 for almost 4 years at a record energy output of 13.6 trillion electron volts, which is a lot. I couldn't begin to tell you how much, but I know it's more than 1.21 gigawatts. And that's all you need to go back in time in a DeLorean. So they're putting out some significant power, basically, is the point. And why are they doing that? That's the question. I do want to bring up that in a previous episode, we talked about a supposed time traveler named John Teeter. And Teeter was around before CERN was doing anything crazy with energy output, and especially antimatter. And to that point, he said that the amount of energy required to travel through time could only be achieved at the point in history where he's from by using antimatter. And within a couple of years of him disappearing, CERN was creating antimatter. All that to say this. They've turned it back on. And I'll be honest with you guys, I have felt... You know how if you have like let's take Coke, for example. Not Coke, but Coke. McDonald's Coke is different than Coke you'd get at a restaurant, like elsewhere, like sit-down restaurant, which tastes different than like a fountain drink at a gas station, which tastes different than a can and a bottle, etc. It's still Coke, but something's a little different. That's the way that I've felt, like with life, like with reality, over the last like 2 months. It's all the same, but something's a little off. Like, you have those dreams sometimes where it's like, oh, I was in my house, but it wasn't my house. I just knew it was my house. Not to that degree, but it's like a few things feel a little different. And I don't know if that makes sense or if any of you can relate to that happening. over the last couple of months, but I've definitely experienced. I know Ruddy has experienced it as well. And it's just something, another little puzzle piece for me with all of this. And I say that because, did they do anything that changed our reality in any way? And that got me looking into a few things, and I remembered learning about the Ziggurat of which is in Iraq. And the Ziggurat of was, it was a holy place that, if you've seen like Stargate, any of that, or you're at least familiar with it, the concept of Stargate was based on an ancient belief inside the Ziggurat of that allowed for interdimensional travel for their gods or superior beings or whoever. That's what the Ziggurat was, and it's in Iraq. That's the important part to remember, where it is. So that was essentially a gateway that was used by the Anunnaki. And when I say Anunnaki, for those of you who aren't familiar, going back into biblical, like, scripture in general, I can go on a big tangent here, so I'm trying my best not to. I could do a whole hour and a half just on the Apocrypha alone. So, the Anunnaki were mentioned quite often in one of the apocryphal books of the Bible, the Gospel of Enoch. And Enoch was a descendant of Cain. The Anunnaki, also called the Watchers, which many of you might be more familiar with that term, they were said to be a race of aliens, or at least that's what many people believe. And the Anunnaki, if you read in the Bible, the Anunnaki, or the Watchers, or however you want to refer to them, bred with the daughters of man and created a race of giants, and those giants were called the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were apparently a big factor in the Great Flood in the Book of Noah. Do I buy into all of it? No, not at all. I do not believe that a 500-year-old man got to have every animal because God told him he was going to destroy the world by flood, and he needed to save everything in a boat. But there's always going to be a nugget of historical truth in some of this. And regardless of the intention, the Anunnaki are mentioned in religious scripture, was the point I'm trying to get at. So there is some historical account, in a sense, of them existing. So, now that we know that, let's back it all up. We've had a couple wars over there, and those conflicts in Iraq have been pretty questionable. And if you really think about it, even deeper, those two conflicts, who we had as president at both of those times, have a little bit of a connection. It's more than just the same last name. It's a father and son. We'll just call them the Georges. So George Bush and George Bush both invaded Iraq. The W, when he did it in 2003, a little more questionable, much more of a stretch than the reason Daddy did it in the early 90s, but you automatically, we all think it's oil, right? That's where we go, and that could be a factor, if not, the only factor. I'm going to throw another possible factor at you today. And I just want you to think about it. And if you've got any pieces that fill in blanks or help solidify, please let us know. I'd love to talk with you guys about it. Social media, email. Maybe we could do a show with a handful of people, like a panel. Who knows? But, excuse me, I did want to talk about this. So we've got both of the Bush presidents invading Iraq under questionable circumstances. Okay, back to the oil thing. But what if I told you Prescott Bush, who was Daddy Bush's daddy, was actually a financial backer of Third Reich research? Now, if you remember much from your history books or, Discovery Channel or History Channel or whatever, the Nazis did a lot of weird shit. As far as human experimentation, scientific research, things of that nature. And one of the things that sticks out the most is Die Glock, which translates to the bell. Now I'm going to read you about this bell, read you some info about this bell, just a quick synopsis of it, and then I'm going to kind of hit you with an idea. So here we go. Die Glock was bell-shaped, about 12 feet high and 9 feet in diameter. It incorporated two high-speed, counter-rotating cylinders filled with a purplish, liquid metallic-looking substance. That was supposed to be highly radioactive. It was codenamed Zerum with an X, Zerum 525. There were claims that the scientists and technicians who worked on the bell and who did not die of its effects were wiped out by the SS at the close of the war. And the device was moved to an unknown location. And there's an idea out there that SS official Hans Kammler later secretly traded this technology to the U.S. military in exchange for his freedom. Now, no one knows for sure what Die Glock was meant to do, but we do know that it had Zerum 25, which is a radioactive fluid, and it had two counter-rotating cylinders inside of it that were filled with this. There's a centripetal motion and a stabilizing motion to that. I mean, think about like with your washing machine. If you have clothes in there and they're all loaded to one side, it's going to wobble, right? But if you counterweight that, it's going to be solid movement. So that seems like it could have been more of a stabilizer than anything else. We don't know. But a lot of the ideas and the people who have researched it seem to think that it was an experimentation, or was an experimentation. My words are off today. I'm sorry, guys. It was an experiment that was going to do some digging into time travel, space travel, interdimensional travel. Essentially, it was going to be used as a weapon, and the technology was like nothing we had ever seen or encountered before. We have an American, a wealthy American, whose family is deeply embedded in U.S. politics, who is backing the research, and his son and grandson end up invading the same area in Iraq under questionable circumstances, where the ziggurat of Ur, a potential gateway that the Anunnaki used, is located. So, big picture. If we want to just look at it as the Bush family, even though it does go deeper than that, obviously. But you've got Grandpa, who's funding research on this crazy technology that no one has ever seen or heard about since, secretly under wraps. It had enough promise, enough power, enough pull, however you want to say it, to get an SS official his freedom just by handing it over. And I know that's not the only person that we did that with, because the SS did a lot of crazy shit that I'm almost positive we took from them at the close of the war. In fact, I think that was a big part of us getting involved in the first place. If you look at the big picture, you have one family span over 3 generations that has been involved in funding research that had the potential to be some sort of vehicle to travel in a way that we have not traveled before. His son becomes president, invades a country where a potential supposed gateway is located. Then his grandson takes office, 20 years later? Hang on, no, it was 8 years later. Not 20. 8 years later. His son takes office. We get attacked by a country, by a terrorist organization that doesn't really have enough roots in Iraq for us to warrant an attack on them, yet we do it because we say, oh, they had a big hand in it, they were harboring, and they have weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't have. And now CERN's up and running again. Just a lot of puzzle pieces. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, this is not going to be a very long episode because all that popped into my head and I wanted to bring it to light. And I know I'm a little crazy, but I want input from everyone that watches, anyone that sees this. I think it'd be pretty cool to have like an open table, like forum discussion with some of you guys if you're interested in it. We could just record it and edit it and throw it on here. But I think there's a lot more to this than what's on the surface. I don't think it's coincidental. You don't have 3 generations of coincidence like that. There's more to it. Even if it is just oil, whatever. Fine, it's just oil. But I think it at least warrants looking into. So with that being said, I want to make sure you guys have our email address. You can shoot me an email, just put in the subject like Keith is fucking crazy or something. I'll take a look at it and reply to you. If any of you guys are on YouTube and have any comments you want to throw in, please do. If I've misquoted something or said something incorrectly or I've got my facts mixed up, you've got anything to add to it, I'd really like to know. So please do that. I just really enjoy doing this stuff. Now, if you're like dead set sold on some kind of theory and you're coming to like push that agenda, I'm not interested in that. This is more of an idea, like a brainstorming session to see if we can make sense of any more pieces, pull some out, just to kind of explore the concept, the idea behind it. I'd love it if any of you guys know much about the Glock, because I know just surface level about it. I haven't dug into it too much, but I know that alone mixed in with Ziggurat of Ur is enough to, spawn some thoughts. But that being said, gang, thank y'all for hanging out with me on my little one-off tangent. We're glad to be back for sure. Lindsay will be back with me for the rest of the episodes, but this one was one I just kind of wanted to break off and do. So until I'm back with my pal, you guys be good to yourselves and good to each other, and we'll see you next time.